Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Gill. I am an SE in the channel team within Checkpoint UK's office, and today we're going to discuss R80.10. We're going to be looking at the key features and changes within R80.10. I'll then discuss the R80 Community, which is your resource for all things R80. We'll then talk about how you can have a quick play with the R80.10 cloud demo. And if time permitting, we will discuss some of the other features and changes within the R80.10 as well. Now, before I start, two things straight away. First of all, R80.10 is in EA, the Early Availability Program. So things you may see here may or may not make it to the final GA release. So it is subject to change. Please keep that in mind. The second point I wanted to bring to your attention is I will be specifically focusing on the key changes within R80.10. So there is an expectation from the audience that you have a degree of familiarity with R80, and you should. We've been messaging R80 for a little while now, so I won't be covering the fundamental differences between R77 and R80. This really is an R80.10 focus presentation. Okay, and with that said, let's go ahead and crack open the GUI and let's have a look at what's being changed in R80.10. So the first realization of an R80.10 gateway is the ability to utilize inline layers. What are inline layers? So an inline layer is effectively what you see in front of you. You see here in Rule 5, which is a parent rule, followed by many child rules, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. So if I click on the right-hand icon, it expands. So what you clearly have here is a structure of a parent and child rule relationship. What are the two benefits that I can think of that this brings to an organization? The first is complete administration control of a layer. So what that means is this whole layer, this access to internet layer, and if you can see in my rule base, I have many rules divided by many sections. I can stipulate within the business that only these rules within access to internet, so everything within Rule 5 and its child rule within this layer, can be modified by a specific administrator or a team of administrators. And I can do that very easily by allocating permissions to that layer. So here I clicked Edit Layer. You can see this layer in particular, Web Control, is unifying firewall, application control, and URL filtering, and content awareness. And within the permissions, I can go ahead and specify which permission profile is able to utilize this layer, or which specific admin or administrators can. In fact, let's show what that looks like retrospectively. So here, John has read-only access to all of the other rules, but read-write access to this specific inline layer. So this specific Rule 12 is an inline layer. We know this because we can see the child rules denoted by the .1, .2, .3, so on and so forth. So this becomes a very powerful component within our business. And as you know, within R80, the system is clever enough to ensure if you have multiple administrators modifying the rule base at the same time, it can then control in a fashion where we don't have race conditions or scenarios where objects are duplicated or conflict of interest. The system just knows. The second big benefit of a inline layer is packet processing. So what does that specifically mean? Well, we all know that as a packet comes into a security gateway, it follows a top-down process. And by that, it evaluates the first rule and works its way down, inspecting each and every rule until it finds a match. Now, if you have a rule base of 1,000, and it's not uncommon, there are many businesses out there that even have several thousand rules. I know, I've seen them. That can introduce a significant amount of packet processing latency, particularly when there's a number of packets coming into a security gateway. However, with an inline layer, this becomes much more optimized to a greater degree. So, for example, a packet comes in here, it knows there's no match on 1, 2, 3, 4. It comes into 5, it looks at the parent rule, there's no match. Guess what? It's going to skip all of these 100 rules within the parent rule. So all the 5.1s, and in this particular example, I have 9, but you may have 100 or 200, whatever it may be, and go on to the next rule. Okay, so what you've done there, you've potentially skipped evaluating 250 rules you know it's never going to match, and the process continues. So again, from an optimization point of view, that is huge. And in an ideal world, we want to facilitate our rule base, leveraging inline layers so that it mirrors to the network architecture. So if we have a look at this slide in front of us, we can see that all the rule base here are followed by an inline layer. So a packet only has to evaluate 10 rules, 10 parent rules, okay, before making a match. So imagine all these parent rules contain 100 rules each, and the match is on parent rule number 4. It skipped 100, it skipped 200 rules, it skipped 300 rules because it knows by the parent rule it's never going to match, and it knows by the parent rule 4 there is a match, and therefore it will expand into rule 4 and look at the child rules until it finds that definitive match. So again, from a packet processing perspective, this becomes such a powerful tool at our disposal. Another example of the inline layers is the ability to reuse our layers. From an admin operation point of view, this becomes much more efficient. And if we look at the slide in front of us, we can see something that's very common, right? We have a common set of rules, but we've had to duplicate them because the source and destination tends to be different. So in this example here, we can see rule 1 to 5, okay, is all about the access to the HQ domain controllers, whereas we can see in rules 19 to 23, they're effectively the same rules, but we've had to duplicate them because this is relating to the UK branch offices, domain controllers rather. So here, we're highlighting the common attributes between those two sets of rules, and we see here the differences. Yeah, the difference really is the source and destination. So what we can do from an admin point of view is actually we can create one layer and reuse them across our needs. So here we're using one layer, the MSDC layers. Okay, one layer where we defined our rules, the common threads of the rules, but we've modified the parent match to meet the needs of HQ and UK branch office. So what I have here now from an admin point of view, if I expand on that, is the same set of rules across the board, but I had not need to then duplicate the rules. It's just referencing that layer, right? You can see here, we've now changed the source and destination to any, because it doesn't matter anymore, as the parent rule will facilitate the specific source and destination we require. Okay, this makes admin operations so much more efficient, and again, a very powerful tool in our arsenal. Okay. So we talked about inline layers and the two main benefits it brings to an organization. We're talking about R80.10. The second big realization from an R80.10 gateway is the ability to now utilize unified policies. What is a unified policy? Well, we've seen it to some degree. This here in front of us is a unified policy, the ability to have a single rule that facilitates our users, our applications, our content in terms of data types, which I'll come on to in a moment, the ability to control beyond and above and beyond just a simpler accept or drop rule, and to really modify the needs on the business basis, okay? So let's expand on that. Let's drill down to a number of these rules just to be able to hit the nail on the head. So if we look at rule 5.3, I can see very quickly that this is a rule that facilitates HR can access social network applications, okay? So in the source, we're using the object HR. This is the Active Directory group called HR, okay? It may have many users, okay? Point being here, we're using identity awareness to put across the Active Directory objects, Active Directory groups, Active Directory users, machine objects, so on and so forth, into the checkpoint infrastructure so we can reference them into the policy. And all of that is dynamic. Any changes that happen in Active Directory, we will know in real time straight away, okay? So HR is able to access the internet using Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn but the company wants to make sure that these HR users are using it in accordance to the corporate policy, i.e. it's work-related and not personal or social related, okay? And we've done that by ensuring that when they access the application, they are met with a comfort page, a notification that shows them the policy as we see fit, and we specify that they will see this once a day per application, okay? Now, let's have a quick look at what those user notifications look like. So if I go into my user tech here on the bottom left, there's the access approval. We can see this is what it looks like from the end user perspective. If the end user is coming in from a mobile device, again, this is what it looks like. If they're coming in from a checkpoint endpoint security agent, again, this is what it looks like. If we have an email set up, then this is what it looks like from an email perspective. And if they are if they're behind an earlier gateway, then R80.10, then again, this is what it looks like. And of course, we can then go into the various user check notifications and we can modify how that looks like to suit the needs of the business. So I can control the logo, the title, the information presented, as well as modifying the variables to suit the needs that I want to show per the business requirements, okay? Okay, brilliant. Now, let's say the business let's go for a scenario where the business has now requested that HR are allowed to download credit card type of information, but absolutely under no circumstances are they allowed to share credit card information outside of the organization. They're not allowed to upload credit card details, files, data to things like Dropbox, Gmail, whatever it may be, okay? I can facilitate this business requirement very quickly and easily in one single rule, in one single pane of glass, without the need to navigate across multiple tabs, multiple GUIs, multiple systems. And you'll see right now. So again, we have a rule that's quite similar, yes, to what the business now requires. So instead of me creating a rule from scratch, let me go ahead and clone this rule. So I'm going to copy this rule, and I'm going to paste it above, okay? Okay, we're going to call this access HR can not share PCI data outside of organization, okay? We'll go ahead and delete these applications. And whilst on the subject of applications, let me just show you something real quickly. And most of you will be familiar with this. But if I type in Facebook, okay, not only can I control Facebook as an application, I can control the various sub-features that Facebook provides. And you can see here, I can control, let's move this box a little bit up. Oh, okay. Right, let's do that again. So we'll ignore that, rewind the last 30 seconds. So I can control things like Facebook Messenger. I can go ahead and control things like Facebook Chat, Facebook File Sharing, Facebook Messages. And we can do this pretty much to most, if not all, applications out there. So not just the application itself, but the features. You might want Skype to be able to record calls, but you might not want to be able to share files within Skype, as an example. And we can control that. We can give you the tools to be as granular as you need it to be. So in our example, the business doesn't want file sharing applications to be utilized when credit cards from HR are concerned. So let's find file sharing. I can try myself to work out a list of all the applications that have file sharing, file storage capabilities. But you know what? Checkpoint makes our life easier anyway. They've actually created a category. Okay. So if I look at this category, I can see this category includes file sharing applications and sites. Okay, for public or private sharing. So it's already got a category of all the applications that have this ability. And as new applications with those abilities come out into the World Wide Web, I can rely on Checkpoint to update this category quickly so that I capture those new applications as well. So let's go ahead and add that into our rule. Okay. Now, this is where the content awareness blade becomes such a powerful tool and gives us the ability to have a truly business-aware security gateway. So we can see here I have all sorts of data types, okay? Large files, large archives, presentation files, serial numbers, source codes, Java, SQL queries, whatever it may be. So we're interested in PCI data, okay, credit cards. We can see here that the match criteria is based on the LUN algorithm. So we can see real analysis, the LUN algorithm. Okay, so this is the most accurate way in identifying credit card numbers instead of just matching on any 16-digit numbers that might look like a credit card number. Let's add that into the rule. Okay. Now the business is okay with HR downloading credit card numbers, but it's the sharing, right? It's the upload. So let's control the direction real quick. So here, uploads. So now we've got a rule that says HR, accessing file sharing and storage type of applications that has any credit card numbers in the upload, in the sharing direction, we're going to go ahead and drop and notify the user that in accordance with the policy, this is not permitted. So a great way user notification is in terms of educating the user in the life cycle of their day-to-day job. So very quickly, I've translated the business need in a single rule, in a single pane of glass, very quickly and easily. Okay, let's take another example. Here, rule 5.5. All these users can access YouTube and Vimeo. However, they must be accessing those applications for work-related purposes, and therefore they are notified by a company policy. Okay, that's brilliant. However, the business has noticed that the bandwidth has started to flake a little. These applications are bandwidth hungry, and they do want to control that. So they've asked me as the administrator to control the applications in terms of its bandwidth requirements. So very quickly, I can rate limit this particular rule in these particular applications. So where was I? Rule 5.5. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's click on more. And very quickly, let's rate limit it so that it's 10 megs per second download. Okay, brilliant. So I push that policy and I've now met the business needs. However, the business has now come back to say, hey, look, we need to control the upload and the download to specific values. Can you facilitate this? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we'll go to our limit. We'll click on our new limit. We'll specify the download as 2 megabits per second per the business requirements and 500 kilobits per second for the upload per the business requirements. And we'll give it a name, of course, company policy. Okay. We'll go ahead and modify this rule so that we have now the new rate limiting profile that we just created. And there we are. Click OK. We'll make sure that that is installed on all our gateways across all our offices and regions and whatever it may be, because you can choose all gateways, you can choose a select few or even a group. That's nothing new. We've been doing that for a very long time. Push the policy, and straight away in that single line of rule, I now have all my gateways across many different offices, many different regions, controlling the bandwidth around the use of YouTube and Vimeo across those certain users. So again, very quickly and easily, I can translate a business need into a single policy, single rule in the policy without having to navigate to multiple different tabs, multiple different systems, GUIs, quads, and so forth and so on. Okay. So just to finish that particular section up, let's just show you something on a slide that I have here. So what you have with R80.10 is one policy to manage everything, okay? Manage your users, manage your devices, your applications, your content, your gateways. If you're using private or public clouds such as NSX, Cisco ACI, Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, all of that can be controlled in this one policy, this single pane of glass, this unified console, which makes life for administrators so much more easier. Okay. What else can I show you within R80.10? So another important feature is if you see, let me minimize my console. If you see here, there's number 12. This is all the changes I have made since I've logged into this session, okay? This is important. Why? Well, let's say I want to add HR to this particular rule. You've seen that number has now changed from 12 to 13. So you can think of these as all the delta changes I've made. So when I publish these changes and push the policy, only these delta changes will be propagated to all my security gateways. And this is huge because previously in the R77 ecosystem, when we push the policy, so we may have 1,000 rules, okay? If we created two more rules, that's 1,002, we'd have to push 1,002 rules. And the bigger your rule base is, the more verification and validation that's required, and therefore the more time it takes to push a policy. Whereas in R80.10, we just push the delta changes. If it's 2 new rules we've made, because that 1,000's already been validated and verified, we don't need to worry about that. We just need to add the 2 new rules. Equally, if within those 1,000 rules, we've made a change to one of those rules, then only that one rule will be going through the validation verification process and pushed to the gateway. So very, very big fundamental change. It makes life so much more easier. It's more efficient, much more quicker. Whilst I'm here, very quickly, what else can I show you? In R80.10, we've added the concept of security zones, or for those who may be familiar with zone-based firewalling, we've given you the ability to use security zones in order to facilitate a security policy within your security gateway. You can see here I have a zone already. It's called the internal zone. What that means is I can have a number of gateways across different offices and regions. They may be small gateways, big gateways, one with 2 interfaces, one with 10 interfaces. All I have to do is just nominate which interface from those gateways are part of the zone, and automatically the security gateway will know which interface, what their IP address is, without me having to manually define the object within the rule base. And if any of those interface or IP address changes but still in the zone, the security gateway will know about this without the need for a policy to be pushed to reflect that change. So very powerful indeed. In fact, let's just show you real quickly. If I go to gateways and servers, if I go to the HU gateway, I can then say that, did it load up? Okay. I can go ahead and say that I want Ethernet 1 to be part of, the wireless security zone, okay, the wireless zone. So I can have an interface in every one of my gateways that's part of the wireless zone, and I don't have to manually define what the IP address is or the object is in my rule base. I can just create one rule that says wireless zone to internet allow. And that's it. Simple, very quick and easy. So let's cancel that. Yes, we want to discard that. Cancel, cancel. Okay. Whilst we're here, I may as well show you the data center object. So if I go to new, more, network object, let's go to servers, and data center. Now, you can see here I have the ability to use Cisco ACI, VMware's NSX or VMware's vCenter. What that means is if I click on that, I just have to provide where the host resides for VMware NSX, the username and password, test the connection to make sure everything's okay, click OK, and automatically I have a hook in through APIs into those respective ecosystems. And what that means is I can then pull across, much like identity awareness, I can pull across the VMware NSX security groups, or even the vCenter individual virtual machine objects into the rule base. And much like I've discussed previously, all of that's dynamic. It doesn't rely on a human. It doesn't rely on a push of a policy. So if the VMware engineer is now modifying, say, one of the objects, he's now, or even in NSX, he's added a new web server into a security group or web server group, because we've got that rule base that says web server to database server allow. He doesn't need to notify, look, there's a new IP address you need to add. Similarly, if he changes the IP address of an object, again, he's done that in his native ecosystem. Because we have that API connection between us and Cisco ACI, VMware, NSX, and so forth, we'll know about those changes straight away dynamically. It's all part of the automation, orchestration field that we're hearing about, and we place directly into that field. In fact, let me just show you a slide on, let me just show you a slide on that just to make things a little bit clearer. So here we have an application-aware policy. So in our policy, we are referencing objects directly from different ecosystems. In this example, we have vCenter, here OpenStack, here ACI, here is Amazon AWS, here is a VMware NSX security group. All of these objects, without having to manually define them in our security policy, we're just pulling them across, And we'll know anytime there's a change, anytime someone makes a change to these objects in their respective ecosystems, we'll know about it. Much like identity awareness, it's dynamic, plays part and parcel within the spectrum of automation and orchestration. So very powerful indeed. Okay. We also have in R80.10, we've also brought back, give me a moment, we also brought back, let's go to network objects, dynamic objects, okay? So we've had dynamic objects for a while. So dynamic object allows you to invoke a script to dynamically ascertain what the IP addresses are, okay? You know, there's so many reasons why you may want to do this. For example, you may have a range of users that's always changing constantly, and someone else updates those range of users, i.e. their IP addresses, for example, and you can just reference that list for a script, okay? Now, the problem previously is if you leverage dynamic object, you would disable secure Excel acceleration templates, which meant that there would be an impact in performance on your gateway. Now, in R80.10, we've reintroduced this functionality again, however, with the full 100% support of secure Excel acceleration templates. It doesn't disable it anymore, so therefore no performance concerns when we look at the gateway. Win-win. Similarly, in the same vein, time objects. So most of you will be familiar with this. So if I add the time object category here, we'll be able to associate a rule with a time object. So in this example, let's click a new time object. I can associate this rule to expire at a certain time or to be valid only between certain time ranges and occurrence of every Thursday or every Friday or every month or whatever it may be. Very powerful to use within the business, but previously, again, it disables secure acceleration templates, secure Excel acceleration templates. Now it fully supports them, okay? Also, what we've introduced in R80.10 is the support for domain objects. So again, if I click on New, click on More, where are we going? Okay, More, Network Objects, More, Domain Objects, okay? So a domain object allows you to put a rule, let's say, www.checkpoint.com, rather than the IP address, it will resolve. Now, previously, again, secure Excel acceleration templates were disabled, okay? But also, it wasn't fully reliable because we use reverse DNS lookups, and not every DNS server has an entry to it, and therefore you would get unreliable results. For example, you may resolve reverse DNS to a service that's used in a CDN provider, and therefore not get the actual server itself, but the CDN provider's IP address, and again, that could cause all sorts of ambiguities within the rule base. However, we changed fundamentally how that works. We're using fully qualified domain name, a forward lookup to be able to resolve with accuracy, and of course support secure Excel acceleration templates. Now, another component in R80.10 where we've added is the ability to clone applications. So, for example, when you look at an application, you can see here we're matching by the signature, so it has to be YouTube based on the signature, based on the Boolean logic and heuristics. But it also has to be using the known services that YouTube uses, okay? Now, you may be using a proxy or whatsoever, and therefore you may want to say, actually, I want to match YouTube by the application signature, but it needs to be based on a specific port or any port. And I can go ahead and do that real quick. So I can say, let's clone this object, click on clone. Okay, I can then modify the match settings, and I can say, actually, we're going to match on any port. Click OK. Done. Okay. We also introduced the feature go-to rule. So again, just making life easier for the administrators. So here, I can go to the cleanup rule. So as you can see, my rule base is divided in sections, denoted by this yellow line above. And imagine if I had a rule base of 1,000 plus, and scrolling to rule number to a particular section, it can be cumbersome. Whereas I can go right directly to that direction. But let's say I know the specific rule. I can go action, go to rule 1. And it will bring me straight there. So I don't have to keep scrolling to the specific rule that I need. So again, not a big thing to rave about. It's just one of those things that we've added to make life so much more easier for the data admins who are operating these security gateways. We've also introduced language functionality within the R80.10 console. Here, for example, if I hit Control F2, Okay, give me a second. That should have worked. Ah, there we go. I can change the language. So here, let's do Japanese. And you can see the GUI is now localized to that specific language. I'll just put it back to English, because obviously it's easier for me to understand. Okay, so now back to English. So again, another thing that we've added in R80.10. We've talked about it for a while, but it's finally here. Moving on, if we look at our threat prevention policy, one of the things that we've done in R80.10, or we've done from day one, but it can only be fully realized with an R80.10 gateway, is unifying the threat prevention software blades. Okay, so if I go in here, click Edit, Command, click Edit. Let that load up. We can see we've unified IPS, which used to previously be in the access control policy within the R77 systems. It is now in the threat prevention system and unified when using R80.10 gateways. Antivirus, threat emulation, and we've also brought back threat extraction, which wasn't there previously in R80, but now is in R80.10, and also the threat extraction indicators, which is also wasn't in there in R80, but now in there in R80.10. Okay. Another powerful feature is the ability to segment our threat prevention profiles across our networks. So what does that mean? Well, think about IPS. Previously with IPS, you had a global profile, right? So what that meant is that if I had an organization where strictly, and this is a simplified example, strictly all the users are using Windows 7 and all the servers are using Linux, okay? I would then go ahead and activate only the Windows 7 signatures and the Linux signatures. But the problem there is if traffic's coming into the user network, I'm still going to evaluate that traffic against the Linux signatures. Even though it's not applicable, because we know all our users use Windows 7, I still have to evaluate it. So again, that costs CPU cycles. It wasn't the best route when we look at performance. However, now in R80.10 gateways, we can now customize these profiles. So I can have an IPS profile that looks at only Linux signatures when it's going to the server network, and an IPS profile that only looks at Windows signatures when it goes to the user network. So again, very powerful stuff. In what else have we added in the IPS element? If we go to IPS protections in R80.10, we can then, within the actions, we can import our snort rules. So we are using snort, we can import those straight into our R80.10 system. Okay. Another thing you'll see here, let's go back to the unified policy again for threat prevention. Another thing you'll see here is an install policy. And again, like the access control, we can push policies just for threat prevention, and we can align certain admins or teams of administrators who can only touch the threat prevention piece but cannot touch the access control piece and so forth. Okay. One of the big fundamental changes we made with R80.10 in terms of IPS is the revision updates. Okay. So if I go to updates here, okay. If I go to switch versions, I can look at all of the updates I have pushed, okay, and revert back to a specific time to a point where only those certain updates were pushed. Okay, what does that mean? So there are times where you push a massive IPS update and for whatever reason, something's gone awry, okay? Maybe it's a bad update, one of the signatures had a bad issue. What that means is previously, it was a convoluted way to get back to where we needed to be. Whereas here, I can say, okay, I've just pushed an update, something not so great has happened. So let me go to the last known good push that I did, which is this one, click switch, and straight away it will be back to where it is, and therefore it will remediate whatever issue was introduced in the latest update that I did, that I've now reverted from. Okay, so let's move back to the slide deck, and let's just have a look to see if there's anything else that I need to cover. Okay, you've seen all this. So other changes in R80.10, the implicit cleanup rule. So in R80 previously, you had to go into the layer, and then there was a radio checkbox option to either modify the implicit rule to be drop or accept. Now we've totally taken that away from the layer itself and introduced it into the rule base. In fact, let me just show you what that looks like. It makes more sense. So if I go into my security policy, click on my access policy here, for example. Let's scroll down to the cleanup rule, and you can see here it's automatically shown. Yeah, the implicit cleanup rule is automatically shown, and I can then modify the behavior. And there's some reasons why you would want to have it implicitly accept or implicitly drop. We're not going to cover the scenarios of why today. Okay, so back to our deck. Other changes. As R80.10 Unified Console is truly a CPM, it means that all the changes reside on the CPM side. Okay, so what does that mean? If you think about pre-R80.10, so basically R77 and below, the smart dashboard, you may have done multiple changes, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you're disconnected, whether it's hung, whether your laptop suddenly reboots, and what you'll find is those changes are no longer there. But because we're now a unified console is a true client, i.e. it can't operate without the CPM server, it means if I, for whatever reason, disconnect from the session, as soon as I connect back in, all of my history is still there. Yeah, all of the changes are still there. So another scenario, I'm going to walk you through a couple of scenarios. So in R80, we had a scenario where if the colleague, as you know, we do multi-administration, multiple administrators at the same time. I've already covered that. So in this example here, my colleague has left to go and grab a beer before he published his changes. So in R80, you may have an admin who's eager to do something, push the policy, and needs those changes to be part of the push policy, but had to wait. Okay, so I need to publish and install the policy with my colleague's changes. But I also want to go for a beer, but I don't want to wait for 1 hour or redo the work. Is there a way? Absolutely. So in R80.10, we introduced session takeover. So here in this example, we have Sol, who logs into the R80.10 and has a unique session ID, and then you have Skylar, who logs into the R80.10 and has a unique session ID. Okay. And here we can then click on Sol's name, and we can click Take Over. And we can click Take Over, and then we'll be able to then assume that session that was previously Sol's. Okay. We can take over the session, we can publish those changes, and then we can then install our policy. And then when Sol logs in, he'll be notified that his session was taken over, and all of that is all audited as well. So another scenario, I want to see the unpublished changes my colleague has done. How can I do that? So previously in R80, we could see administrators' changes once they're published, but if they haven't published it yet, other admins couldn't see what these unpublished changes were. They will see a lock icon to know that it's been modified, but they couldn't specifically see what these changes are until it's published. Now in R80.10, of course, any published changes is public, so all administrators can see. However, and again, it's audited, so full management audit is available. However, for private changes, we now have a session tab, and for those changes that haven't been published, any admin can see what those changes are. So again, very useful indeed. What else have we introduced in R80.10? So another example here, we need to identify the rule allowing HTTP traffic to a Tor node of 6.6.6.6 in the branch policy. So this is what we call policy simulator, right? It's the idea of, theoretically, if I have this packet and it's going over there and it's using this service and it's this IP address, what rule would that hit? Yeah. So this is great in terms of if you had a new business requirement, you could, instead of creating a new rule, you could just use the policy simulator to see if there was a rule that it would match, and then you can say, okay, there's a rule already that it would match, fine, or if you need to modify it in some respects. So, and I know this doesn't follow the example previously, but you can see here within the search bar, you do mode, you click packet, you type in source, the destination, whatever information you know, and it will pull all the rules that it would potentially match. And that allows you then to figure out what you want to do. Do you want to then go ahead and modify an existing rule, or are you happy that this rule covers it, so you don't need to do anything, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the R80 community. So what the R80 community is, if you go to community.checkpoint.com, it allows you to log in, so you can quickly register, log in, and then you can post questions to experts and other customers as well, who are using R80, other users rather. You can discuss things that you've seen, and you can share some of the APIs and scripts that you've done, and you can download other people's APIs and scripts. It's just a massive community to fully realize the potential in R80. The R80.10 cloud demo, so very quickly, it's the demo that I've been using. So if you go to this SK, download the console, and then what you have is, and I'm just going to break out this. I'm going to break out this presentation to show you. So let's break out here. Let's just minimize this. Okay, very messy desktop there, indeed. If I go ahead and let's just, as soon as I've installed the R80.10 console, I launch it, okay? Click start, and here I have a tick box that says demo. If I hover my mouse on it, it says experience the R80.10 management using Checkpoint Cloud Demo Services. So I'll tick that, I'll click next. Obviously, it's recognized I have an existing session, which is the session I'm using to demonstrate to you today. We'll start a new demo, okay? We'll click login. And what this will do in the background is it will spin up a server in the cloud that Checkpoint owns, and it will provide you an experience, yeah, the R80.10 experience, similar to what I've shown you today. And in fact, it's exactly the same. We'll let this load. We'll give it a minute or so, let it load. Okay. So first of all, you're presented with a tour screen, a welcome screen, and you can go through this, and it will list various useful information about where, what, why of R80.10. So I highly recommend you do go through this. It'll give you a bit more of an insight as to what to do. And now you have a fully functioning demo. So in this demo environment, I'm managing a number of gateways, some in R77.30, some in R80, some even in R80.10, etc., etc. Again, if we go to security policies, I can start having to play around with the rules. So we'll let this policy load up. And again, predefined rules there for you to sort of play with and sort of have a bit more of an understanding, a bit more of a hands-on, so you can get your hands sort of dirty really quickly where R80.10 is concerned. Okay. Okay. Right, so back to our slide deck. We're almost done now. The R80.10 EA, so I did mention this previously, it is in EA, it is in early availability mode. However, if you're a partner and you have customers, or if you're a customer and you're interested, you can go into your User Center account, click Winning the Market, click on the early availability programs, and there'll be a list there of the EA programs we have available. You'll find R80.10 there. You can subscribe to that list. You can then download the ISO, the release notes, and all the other elements that come with it. And what the EA program will give you is the ability to, obviously, if you've got the ISO image, you can spin up a couple of virtual machines and have a little play. But obviously, the bigger overarching goal for the EA program is if you can install that in your production environment, we, Checkpoint, will give you a dedicated Checkpoint engineer to sit with you on site to show you how you can get the best out of this. And it's also an option for you to feed back to that engineer. So you may want to see something in the build, in the final release, that's not quite there. You might have some ideas that will benefit your business, and that engineer can feed that back to HQ, headquarters, and they can have a discussion to see if they would include that. So you can actually be part of building this final release. You can have a say, effectively. And that is the end of the presentation. There's so much things I can show you, but I wanted to keep this within 45 minutes time frame, which I think I have. And if you want to know more, if you want to see more, go ahead and contact your partner if you're a customer, or if you're a partner, go ahead and contact your local SC, and they'll be more than happy to set up something for you and really go through a bit more of a deep dive and a bit more of a walkthrough for you. So I hope this has been useful for you. I hope it's been informative, and I hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Okay, thank you very much.